authorities, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Good afternoon. I know it's after the lunch, it's not easy, but actually only for you, because for me, in my country, it's time to wake up and go to work. So I'm feeling right. I have no problem. Actually, it's an honor for me to be here. I'm very, very happy. It's a special opportunity, my third time in Marruecos, this wonderful country. Not only because I'm a Brazilian, because in Brazil we all love Marruecos, but it's because I have studied this country. Marruecos is a member country of CIAT, and we are very proud of it. Mr. Omar Farhaj asked me to talk about taxation and competitiveness. And we know that it's a very complex and challenging issue. There are many definitions of competitiveness. What is competitiveness? What is be competitive? No? I like the definition from the World Economic Forum. To them, competitiveness is the set of institutions, policies, and factors that determine the level of productivity of a country. This is enough to see that it's a very complex concept. Define institutions, policies, and factors. They use this wheel. This is not mine, it's from the World Economic Forum. No? And I think this is the best you can find at the internet when you look for competitiveness. They divide this wheel in three categories. I can read from here, but it's the basic requirements, is issues related with institutions, infrastructure, macroeconomic scenarios, and health and primary education. This is the basic requirements. The others, the second group is what enhance competitiveness and include high education and training, include good market efficiency, include labor market efficiency, include financial market development, and technological standards and the market size. You see there are many very complex points to be a competitive country. And the third group is 2 points that push the technology, no? Is the innovation and the business sophistication. Of course, we can stay here the whole day to discuss each one of these points, no? It's not my idea. My idea is to use this just like to show that taxation affects, we can say, all of these points. We can use taxation to promote innovation, or maybe taxation could be a big obstacle to innovation. No? So taxation touches all these areas. No? As I don't have time to talk about all points, but I would say when we look for taxation and competitiveness, we should consider at least 4 points. The first is we need to recognize, I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about the society, that the taxation is the only source of resource that could guarantee the financial stability in a long-term vision, to guarantee the public revenue for basic public policy. It's taxation. I come from Latin America. We used tax inflation during many years to close the budgeting. With inflation, it's so easy to close the budgeting. But who pays for this inflation? The poor people, of course. We use, in many cases, to finance our deficit with debt. But what is that? That is the tax for our grandsons. And even the resource, natural resource, we know that is very volatile. The companies need to recuperate this VAT on depreciation. This is not a consumption VAT. This is an income VAT. And if you don't allow depreciation too, they will transfer this VAT on capital goods to the price. It will be a price VAT. So, and this is easy to say, but there are many countries, they don't give you back the credit that you have on the capital goods. And this, I think, is a critical point to be competitive, is to create the mechanism to promote the capital goods. No? And, of course, exports, to promote the export sector, you need to give the VAT back. In my country, we have many complaints from the private sector because we don't give the VAT back to the export side. So it's very difficult to be competitive if you export tax in this world. No? So VAT, we know that VAT is an excellent tax, very efficient in terms of cash collection. But VAT is a very complex tax, no? Very difficult tax to comply and to administer, to deal with. No? But not only VAT, when you think for taxation, corporate income tax, there are many points, but I select just three: debt and equity. If you don't treat equity in a good manner, the companies, what they do, they will create debts. Because, for example, in my country, we don't have problem with teen capitalization because the companies, they don't need to take a loan to finance their activities, because if they increase the capital, they can deduce a small part of the capital as a cost. So it's the same to take a loan to deduct interest or to increase capital. But what is important to have a policy to treat equity as debt. The losses, if you don't allow companies to compensate their losses, in many cases we cannot do this. We put a term, oh, you can compensate 2 years term, or 3 years, or maybe 5 years. But in many cases we have long-term investments. They accumulate many years of losses. They need to compensate. And the inflation. The inflation is another very complex issue to deal with corporate income tax. A personal income tax, should we tax savings or not? Should we tax capital gains in a better way than we tax salaries and wages? We normally tax capital gains in a lower level than salaries, for example. Is it fair? Maybe it's not. But if you tax capital gains in the same level of wage, if you do this alone in this world, maybe the capital will fly to another areas of the world. No? So customs, to be competitive, of course, we need a very ethical and safe and quick customs. No? Well, the third point, I think, to be competitive is because we trust on the markets, but we know that the markets, they don't are like we would like they could be. So we need to correct the failures of the market, and we, especially to promote research and developing, or to finance higher education, to protect our environment, to promote the use of IT. You'll see in another slides that in Latin America and Caribbean, for example, the tax incentives are at the average 4 points of the GDP. And it's interesting, because if you look
for the debt, public debt of the region, is 4 points of the GDP. So we have the solution to eliminate the fiscal deficit. Just eliminate the incentives. But this maybe will be a mistake. What we need to do is evaluate incentive by incentive, because in many cases we can construct sectors of the economy using incentives. I was director of tax policy 20 years ago in my country, in Brazil. We were at that time fighting with Argentina to attract capital for trucks and cars industry. And Brazil, that time, was more aggressive than Argentina to promote the industry. In a few years, we jumped from 4 industry to 16 assembling cars industry in Brazil using incentives. So now Brazil can export 4 million, can produce 4 million cars a year. So it was a mistake to promote that sector? Maybe not. Maybe other incentives, it was a mistake. But what I think is all countries of the world use incentives to promote sectors, especially to compensate market failures. No? And the tax administration. The tax administration should be very, should concentrate their action to fight against tax fraud, because the worst tax in the world is the tax that you pay and I don't. It's tax evasion. This is the worst. If you allow tax evasion, no, this is very against competitiveness. No? Tax certainty to avoid conflicts. No? We are living in an area that countries are signing a lot of agreements to avoid double taxation. And we have other countries with many examples, but we need to promote the APAs, the Advanced Prices Agreements, to avoid, to give tax certainty to the taxpayers. No? And work in order to reduce the compliance costs and the administrative costs. Both costs we call tax transaction costs. No? Now I would like to show you a few slides looking for Latin America. Maybe Latin America is not the best region of the world in terms of tax policy, but if you look for our tax administration, be sure that you find things in Latin America that we are leading the use of IT. Maybe you don't know, but Chile is the only and first country in the world to give to the taxpayers the VAT draft tax return. How they could do this? Because in Chile there is no more invoice in paper, only electronic invoice. If you go to Mexico, and you ask for an invoice, they don't have. It's 100% on an electronic invoice. And not only Mexico, in Brazil, Argentina, Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, Colombia, we have at this moment more than 14 countries using electronic invoice as a mechanism, not only to reduce the tax evasion VAT, but to promote the relation business to business and business to commerce. And it's not only on VAT. If you go to Brazil and you start a company in Brazil, maybe it will be a surprise for you that you don't have to present a tax return anymore in America. Especially because, as we had in the past, so many problems, we evaluate and we conclude, as we don't have a tax morale in our society, we conclude that the only solution that we had was to work hard in the use of IT tax. But this is so easy to say, but it's difficult to implement. Take a look on Bolivia and Canada or the United States. This is the GDP. The blue line is the participation of people remuneration. So in Bolivia, in Panama, Bolivia, 25% of the GDP goes to the people, like income. In the United States, it's 56. So, of course, it's easier to collect more of income tax in the United States or in the European Union, that is 48%, than in Bolivia or in Brazil or in other countries. No? Because if we try to collect more at this moment, it's like what we will do is to hunt in the zoo, no? Is to collect from people that is paying. What we need to do is to increase the tax base, but this takes time. It's a long road, no? The administrative cost of the region is very low, and the collection cost is, the average is 1%. For each $100, to collect $100, the cost of collection is $1. This is a high standard for a tax administration. I would like to, this is an important chart.